Hello, thank you for joining us this evening to talk about proposed improvements for Abernathy Roswell Road intersection. My name is Kristen Westcott. I'm the Traffic and Transportation Unit Manager for Public Works in Sandy Springs. Just to give you a little bit of background and context of how we arrived here. About a year ago, we performed a citywide assessment of high crash locations across the entire city to kind of hone in and pinpoint where we had the greatest number of crashes. The intersection of Abernathy and Roswell Road was found to have a high rate of crashes, both to property damage and injuries. So in terms of trying to figure out what was going on there, we sought a study to kind of look at the crash patterns and the volumes to see if there are corrective actions that we could take to mitigate the crashes, and we've hired Kimley Horn and Associates to undertake that study. So with their review and study of the crash patterns over a number of years, they have identified some short range and relatively low cost geometric improvements. And this evening, they're going to present those for consideration by the city. So we are looking forward to hearing your input, and I'm going to introduce next the project manager from Kimley Horn, Tracy Lehman, who will tell you more about how you can participate and give us feedback on these proposed alternatives.
Great, Kristen. As Kristen said, I'm Tracy Lehman, excited to be here tonight to speak with all of you, and thank you for taking your time this evening to talk with us to learn more about this intersection and the safety concerns that have been identified here. Before we really dive in, we want to go over a few housekeeping items. Right now, everyone is muted. We will allow people to submit questions via the question and answer pod. So you should be able to see that on Zoom. You should have something that looks similar to this, and it has a Q&A feature. Yours may have less features, but you can click on that and it will bring up a pod where you can then submit answer or questions in there. And our team will be monitoring those throughout the presentation, and we will also allow time after each improvement is discussed for you to go ahead and submit questions. We'll answer many of them in the pod, in the chat pod with you, and then others we will take live and go ahead and answer those and respond in real time as part of this presentation. And so after we finish the presentation and go over each of the different proposed improvements, there will also be a time where we will again open up the ground for questions, and happy to answer those at that time. Any questions that we don't get to tonight because of time, feel free to, we've set up a survey which we'll walk through. We'd love for you to put your information in there, your contact information with your question. That way we can respond. The other way to do that would be using the tool tonight, submit your question in the Q&A pod, but be sure to include your contact information. And that way, if we run out of time and are unable to answer it, or we need more information in order to supplement our answer, we'll be sure to contact you if you would like with a response to your question. And so with that, we're going to dive in. Tonight, we'll be showing and sharing the information using the online platform that will be provided for everyone, and a link will be on the website. So you can access this portal, but we'll be working on it tonight. So as you can see when we're going through the information, just take note of how I'm kind of navigating the screen. That way you'll be able to also navigate it as you're looking to provide your input. And as Kristen said, this intersection, specifically Roswell and Abernathy Road, was identified as a high crash location within the city. And as part of that, the surrounding area and segments were also identified by the city. And so this was a project where we undertook to really dive in more deeply to both the crash data that is out there. We did and conducted field observations to understand more, and met with city staff and others out at the intersection to watch behaviors of motorists as they travel and traverse the intersection and the surrounding area. And so the improvements that we have tonight are really based on that information that we gathered, again, the crash history, and then those observations of different areas. And so as you can see on this page, when I'm navigating through the intro page, which is accessed by clicking on this home button, introduces each information about the different pages so you can navigate. So when you come back here, you'll be able to see this information again, review it prior to providing your feedback for us. And so here's just, I'm going to skip over this part about how to navigate the page, but you can scroll using these dots or zoom down or just with your mouse zoom. And if you do need any assistance while you are going through the and accessing the website, feel free to send an email to this address and we can get help to you about how to navigate the page, or you could just submit your comments there if you're having any trouble. And so just a little bit about the crash history at the intersection. We reviewed the most recent 5 years of data that's available from GDOT. There were a total of about 550 crashes that occurred out them, with the vast majority being rear end crashes. And you can see some other crash types here as well, but predominantly rear end and side swipe, same direction crashes. And those types of crashes really are similar to what you'd expect when you have a high volume intersection similar to this. This is one of the highest volume intersections within the city. So not entirely unexpected, but trying to dive in a little bit more about what are some of those rear end crash patterns and what are the other types of crashes that are occurring that have correctable patterns that we may be able to make a difference or make improvements to try to prohibit those or prevent those types of crashes from occurring in the future. So as we look through the data, it was very obvious there were quite a few crash patterns out there that we see regularly. And I think many of you, since you travel, I'm guessing you travel through this intersection, often are aware of these patterns. And you could or probably have told us these are what are occurring out there. And it's always good to have that background of, so this is what we're hearing, this is what we're seeing, and here's the data that also supports that. And so that is what we are seeing when we look out here at the intersection. So you can see the rear end crashes occurring, particularly on through movements. So you see those in the southbound, the northbound, and the westbound directions, equaling about 25% of the crashes that have occurred in the study area. So that, again, this 38, this 45, and this 55. We also see a pattern of crashes, the westbound movement to northbound on Roswell. So you're traveling on Abernathy and you're making a right turn and then trying to merge onto Roswell. We see a pattern with those crashes. About 20% of the crashes occurring at the intersection actually occur as rear end crashes for vehicles. So not the first vehicle, it's not the vehicle that's merging out and merging with northbound traffic, but it's the person behind them and their expectation for when that driver will move. That is where we are seeing a pattern of crashes occurring. And so those are rear end crashes that occur at this location. Again, that westbound to northbound movement onto Roswell Road. One of the other locations that we see and regularly hear information from the public is the South Publix driveway. So that's that southernmost driveway that aligns with the access to the Goodwill Shopping Center on the west side of Roswell Road. And often that is for those vehicles turning and making a left out. And then we also see a pattern, while the movement is currently prohibited using signage, the southbound left turn movement, folks trying to turn left into the shopping center, making that currently illegal movement. And the last pattern we see is southbound to westbound. So southbound Roswell turning westbound onto Abernathy. And based upon our review out there in the field, this is a little challenging here. It looks like there's a lane, an exclusive lane for vehicles that are making that right turn, and there is not. And so trying to correct that, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about it later. Other things that we observed, just different bicycle and pedestrian safety concerns, and you guys can go through and read all of this information that's provided here. Often it appears there's difficulty traveling, making it across the crosswalks in time. It's a very large roadway, lots of lanes, and so difficulty with the current signal timing to actually make that movement. Some conflicts with right turning vehicles, and the bike lane obviously ends prior to getting to this location. And so we've identified different areas of improvement as part of this, based upon correctable crash patterns that we've seen, as well as the field review that was conducted and the observations that were done out there. And so with that, we're just going to dive right into talking about the different improvements that have been pulled together and recommended, really to correct those patterns that we just discussed. You'll see those same locations coming up here, and that's intentional. So there are 7 total improvements. The 7th is really a timing improvement. So it's adjusting the crosswalk time for someone to cross one of these legs of the intersection. And so that one is not shown graphically, but we will go through it just so you know, you don't see 7 numbers here, and that's just why. That one's not specifically called out. So we're going to go through each one of these. The goal of the city with this is to gather input today. Based upon what we're hearing, we will take that information into consideration and understand how we want to move forward. Right now, the total cost to implement the different recommendations is just over $300,000, and the city is seeking funding and support from GDOT, or will be seeking that as part of the project to help pay for the construction of those. And so for the first project, that is signalizing this right turn movement from westbound Abernathy Road to northbound Roswell. So when you're looking at the intersection, if you're driving through, the public shopping center is off the screen to the south here, and the Alderwood apartments or condos are on the northeast side. And so it's that turn, that crash pattern that we were talking about earlier, from westbound Abernathy to northbound Roswell. And so with this, there would be a signal put up for that right turn movement. So this would now tell you when you can make the right turn. So you would not be able to go when the intersection is, you'll get a signal and it will say it's green and you can go. And so what this does is, we talked about that often that second driver waiting to make this turn, the first driver may think they have the ability to turn out onto the roadway, and then they stop at the last minute because they're having to turn their head, all the way to the left and around their shoulder to really see, because of the angle that this approaches the northbound lanes. And so with this, the drivers, all of them, the first driver as well as those behind them, will understand, okay, it is now time for us to go. And so when the vehicle in front of me is moving, they're not going to stop unexpectedly, and everyone can travel northbound then. So there are some signal improvements here. And with that, we want to pause for a moment. And if there are questions, if you have questions about this specific improvement, feel free to go ahead and put those into the question and answer pod, and we can take some of those live that come in if there are questions. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions right now. I'll give it another few seconds here. I don't see any coming in. Yes, that's correct. So okay, we've got 2 questions and you can't read them. So let me read them before just saying that's correct. Okay, we've got a few that came in. Okay, so the first question, is, I'm guessing there would be no right on red. And that's correct. So with this new signalization, you would not be able to turn right on red. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was technical, not understanding how it was working. So you would not be able to turn right on red with that. And we did run the operational analysis to understand the impacts of that. And we believe that the operation shouldn't be necessarily worse, since you'll be able to go during the eastbound and westbound movements, as well as when the southbound left is occurring. There's a large period of time where that westbound right can be given a green signal and be able to continue through the intersection. Is there enough storage capacity for the right turns? So we did look at that as part of our analysis. We do know that it, sometimes can, as the storage there, the queue can get can back up slightly. It does look like with this and making it a right turn on red only, it will still operate really well. And the reason for that is just because the amount of time that you'll be given the green light to be able to continue at that location. Will there be a pedestrian crossing into the island? So there will be, right under this signal, there's a crosswalk. It's kind of covered in this graphic just because of where the signal heads would go. And so yes, there would still be that crosswalk to cross over to get into the island at that location. I think that's what's being asked. And then it would have a pedestrian head to tell you when appropriate to make that crossing. Let me see here. Okay, and so then left turn. So the one question is the left turn light on eastbound Abernathy to northbound Roswell Road is too short. Will you adjust it? Eastbound Abernathy. So eastbound Abernathy, I don't think that question pertains to this particular movement right now. So that left turn from eastbound Abernathy to northbound Roswell is too short. So the signal has adaptive timing right now. And so as part of this project, the signal adjusts based upon volumes that are out there. So we can certainly take a look at that left turn movement from eastbound Abernathy to northbound Roswell and look into that more as part of this to see if there needs to be more time allocated to that movement. So thanks for bringing up that concern. Okay, and the last question is, so are you going to slow the progression of traffic because people don't pay attention? That's going to cause more congestion. And so I guess we're not necessary. I think what we're doing is we're clarifying when people can make that movement. And I think it will, I guess in my professional opinion, this will allow vehicles to more efficiently make the right turn movement because it will be green and they will know for sure that this is a time where they can continue and travel northbound without having to yield or worry. So that gap between each vehicle will be shortened. And so therefore, I think it will improve the efficiency for this location and definitely, not having crashes occurring at this location on a regular basis. That also helps with general congestion for the area because we won't have responses to crashes and those types of things that, while they're not necessarily normal operations that are out there, it does have a big impact on how the intersection can flow. And so that is another benefit of doing these types of improvements. Okay, so I really appreciate everyone providing those comments for the first question or for the first project. And we are going to go ahead and move on to the second, and we'll document those questions, particularly, the comments that may add on to or change or modify what we're proposing at this point. Okay, so then I'm again with my mouse, I'm just going to scroll. So I'm using for those that may have joined a little later, this is actually the input tool that you'll be able to come to. So you'll be able to read all of this information later before you provide specific feedback. And so I'm able to navigate this by clicking on the panels to the left or just scrolling my mouse button. And so the next project is to shorten the east median by 20 feet on Abernathy Road. And so what we're specifically talking about, again, to the northeast, Alderwood on Abernathy. The Alderwood apartments, condos are on the northeast quadrant, and the public shopping center is down here to the southeast. And so here you see where that Starbucks is, southbound on Roswell Road, east-west on Abernathy, and we were talking about this median that separates westbound Abernathy traffic from eastbound Abernathy traffic. And what was observed with this location is there are concerns with this dual southbound left turn lane. And so as these vehicles are turning, because of how far this median comes out, we notice that drivers often slow down and there are side swipe crashes that occur. But the drivers generally slow down because they are trying to make sure they're aligned correctly to not hit this median as they complete their turn to travel eastbound. And so we think by pulling back this median, it gives this driver a little bit more space to more freely make this movement and align themselves properly in the lane without having to slow down unexpectedly to the driver behind them as they're traveling through there. And so with that, the stop bar would be pushed back a little bit for the westbound left turns, but generally just moving back this median nose. And so with that, if there are any questions about the second project, we're happy to take those now. And we'll give you a few minutes again to type those in. And this was observed while we were out in the field, but there's also the crash patterns there, related to the rear end crashes again that are occurring at the intersection. I think we talked about how substantial those are overall at the intersection, and this should help with that, those crashes, as well as the side swipe specifically occurring when someone's trying to adjust at the last moment. Give you a few more seconds to get those questions in. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions coming through on this one. I'm going to go ahead and move on to project 3. And if I see one, I will, and just come in here in a second, I will pause. So I'm going to click on this to just jump to the third one. So for project 3, that is modify the southbound overhead signs on Roswell Road. Those of you that travel here often probably notice that there's a lot of signage here. It's very confusing. If you're not familiar, trying to figure out exactly what lane you need to be in, and you're trying to also navigate the long queues that are here, there are a lot of vehicles that are backed up. It generally doesn't look like this, particularly during the peak hour. There's a lot of vehicles and they go through the stop bar that's shown, stop here on red. There's just so much signage. It's very, very, very difficult to see. And it's likely that that is contributing to the rear end crashes that are occurring on this location, as well as side swipe crashes. So as part of this project, we would suggest to simplify this signage and just to make it so that it is information that can be absorbed while the driver's traversing through the intersection. And there are some other projects that kind of go along with this that we're going to talk about in project 4. And so I may go ahead and do those two together because it might make more sense that way, and take questions for those at the same time. So with the modifying the signage, the other project that would be occurring is installing a barrier median to separate these two lanes. And so to separate the southbound left turn from the through lanes, we would install a barrier median. And so as a result of that, our friends at Sunnybrook Lane, unfortunately, would not have the opportunity to make a southbound left turn at this intersection at this particular location anymore. But there are a lot of concerns there with how this is currently operating, with the amount of signage that is out there, with the current queues that are out there, and really the crash history that's occurring here that just make it not, it makes it really the distinction between the lanes really necessary to help improve safety at this location. And so what we would be looking to do is install a barrier median. Here, there's a picture of what that may look like. And what it does, it just separates the lanes. If you've been out there, you may have seen vehicles even driving in the wrong direction to try to cut through vehicles that are queued at this location, blocking the driveway to try to get over into that turn lane. So folks that do live on this portion of Sunnybrook Lane would have the opportunity to come and make that left turn movement at Wright Road. This is another signalized intersection. And so while that does impact travel for some, we do believe that the safety benefits will be substantial by providing that median here, and therefore then prohibiting that movement for some, but really streamlining and allowing us to simplify the overhead signage and simplify where people should be in lanes, and making people choose their lanes further ahead so that they won't be crossing over as they're passing Sunnybrook Lane, which may make it easier to make a right out to continue going southbound in Roswell from Sunnybrook if that's your choice of where you're traveling, or to go west. So with that, I'll take questions on this. I see that we did get one question. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know if it's related to the signage or the barrier, but I'm happy to answer questions on either of those two projects now. So project 3, simplifying the overhead signage, or project 4, installing the barrier median between the lanes. And so the first question that has come through is, will you eliminate the confusing stop line here heading southbound before the light? So yes, as part of this, we would be removing that stop line. Yes. And so the second question is, maybe got answered. Oh, okay, hang on. I think I missed one. Is there a light at the Wright Road Abernathy intersection? Yes, that is a signalized intersection there at Wright Road and Abernathy Road. Okay, so that's all the questions that have come in at this time. I'm going to move on to the next question, or next project. I keep saying question. Apologies for that. So the next project, how high, sorry, there was one more. How high will the median be, or would the barrier be? So the barrier, I'm not sure exactly of the exact height, but similar in this picture, it's not very far off the ground, but it will be indicated so that you know that there's a barrier there. So just like a typical median height. I don't know if that's 4 to 6 inches would be my guess. If someone else, David, if you know specifically, feel free to type that in, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, 6 inches.
6 inches. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, okay, we got another one. Will the turn lane from Roswell south to Abernathy east, I'm going to go back just so I can see. Will the turn lane from Roswell south to Abernathy east be shortened to start past Sunnybrook to allow us some opportunity to exit onto Roswell Road? So no, as part of this, the turn lane length to Abernathy east, yeah. So the southbound left turn, that length would still be far back, but the median would be separating it. And so the vehicles now that are traveling, you know, would still be queued if they're going through the intersection, but there shouldn't be people changing lanes. So what I would anticipate for folks if they were trying to turn right out from Sunnybrook, that it'd be more clear when there are gaps to allow for that movement. There would be vehicles, you know, that could queue past your driveway or past the street here, but they would only be through vehicles. It wouldn't be as many confusion like with lane changes and things like that that are occurring out there now. I know that there's a stop bar out there now that gets completely ignored, that isn't enforced. And so that coupled with lane changes does make it difficult. I'm not sure that this will become, I would like to say that it would be a little more clear because of the driver behavior and driver expectancy. However, you know, in these types of situations, it may be a safer option to use this Wright Road and the signalized intersection here to make that movement. Just because of how closely spaced it is, this access, the amount of spacing here is not a typical spacing that would be allowed in normal, like if this was being constructed today. Okay, so moving on to project 5. Project 5 looks specifically at this northwest corner of the intersection. I'm going to grab a sip of water. And so as you may remember in the beginning, we talked about the driver expectancy here and the crash pattern, but more specifically, it looks right now, because of this striping, it looks like if you're making a right turn from Roswell Road to go west on Abernathy Road, it looks like you have your own lane, an acceleration lane is what we call, a lane where you could accelerate and then merge over. That's not the intention of the extra pavement that's here. It's actually to facilitate trucks that are turning left. And so it's a truck apron. And so what we're proposing is to eliminate this current striping that's here and add striping to better delineate that apron and better delineate that you need to stop and make sure it's clear before making this right turn into travel, into the westbound travel lanes. And so we believe this will help the rear end crashes that are currently occurring here. Again, it's a similar issue to what we discussed occurring on the northeast corner of the intersection, where vehicles, it's not the first vehicle that has the crash, it's the vehicle behind them, because the first vehicle stops unexpecting and then will stop and not expecting that first vehicle to stop, they will rear end that car. So if anyone has questions about this and the striping improvements that would be here, please let us know that now, and I will take those questions. And with this, it will just be striping. And so the northbound, the trucks will still be able to use that as an apron. It just will not look like a travel lane. The question is there an island that's being eliminated in this change? So right now there's a striped island here in the northwest corner. It is not a raised island of any sort. It is not used as pedestrian refuge. Simply, this island is for pedestrians to have a shorter crossing distance. In this case, it's just striped island. And so it will be removed, but it's not a physical barrier of any sort at this time. Okay, so seeing no other questions, I'm going to move on to project 6. So this project is south of the intersection. This may be the one a lot of folks are interested in or have feelings about related to the current patterns. I know the city regularly receives calls about the safety at this location. And this plan, I want to point out, it is more challenging to understand it. So I am going to spend some time explaining what this is showing specifically. So this project would, so again, we're south of the intersection and we are at the driveway, the southernmost driveway to the public shopping center and the Goodwill shopping center. So right where those two align, southern Publix driveway. And what we would be proposing as part of this project is to extend the median that's currently there, the raised median, further south. And so it would come and extend past the Publix driveway. And so with this, it would prohibit vehicles physically from, currently there's a sign here saying no left turn into the shopping center. With this barrier, it would prohibit those vehicles from making that illegal movement by having the barrier here. And it would change the Publix driveway to a right in, right out driveway. So what that means is if you're traveling northbound on Roswell Road, you'd still be able to turn and make your right in. If you're traveling out of the shopping center, you would be able to make a right out. You would not be able to go through the intersection and travel to the Goodwill shopping center, and you would not be able to make a left turn out and go southbound on Roswell. And so you would need to choose a different route in order to do that. Looking at the west side of the intersection, so if you're traveling to or from the Goodwill, southbound, you'd still be able to make your right turn in. Northbound, there's currently a two-way left turn lane. So there's striping here. We anticipate that we'd be able to have that turn lane remain. And so the median would come on the right side of you, and you could still make this left turn into the Goodwill Shopping Center. So in those movements stay, but for the Goodwill, you would not be able to turn left out. You would not be able to go through, as we discussed earlier, for the Publix, but you would be able to turn right out. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of those movements in more detail, but I think that is what I'd like to, to explain for that. So let's look more about the rerouting. But again, the reason for this and the extension is this is a current, there's often crashes at this location, particularly conflicts with the westbound left turn lane, or westbound left turners and southbound illegal movements into the Publix. And there are also a lot of pedestrians that travel through here that are riding the bus that often are, running through traffic. And the queues often extend through this location. And so that's really what makes it challenging. So we're going to talk a little bit about the rerouting. So if you wanted to go south on Roswell Road, and hopefully this answers the question that was also submitted, and you're traveling from the Publix, right now our recommendation would be to choose one of the driveways on from the shopping center onto Abernathy Road, and to make a U-turn at the Alderwood Place intersection. So you would make a U-turn, and then you would come and turn left at the signalized intersection here, and then continue south. And so, yes, this does require rerouting for vehicles that want to go south on Roswell. And we understand that is not necessarily ideal, but recognizing the safety concern that, you really don't want to be turning left at this location, because it is a risky behavior at this point. So we believe that making a U-turn movement and then coming south is a safer option, and will reduce the amount of crashes that are occurring at this location, and hopefully save a life, because our analysis in the crash history did not show any fatalities here occurring as a result of this driveway. But that does not mean that this is not something that, this is still something that could occur in the future because of how risky this type of movement is. Okay, and I'm going to show one more rerouting option, and if people want to see others, I'm happy to talk through them. So please do put those in the into the chat pod, and we'll go over those questions. So this example is showing if you wanted to go from the Goodwill Shopping Center to the Publix, that rerouting is an easy one. You would just turn right out and then use one of the other Abernathy Road access points. So again, just choosing a different route out of the Goodwill Shopping Center and then turning right into one of the driveways on Abernathy Road. Okay, so I'm going to go through the questions that have been submitted now. And so please continue to submit those questions as we go through. So I answered. So as an owner in Alderwood, I do not agree with this recommendation. This would only increase the number of U-turns at our intersection and crashes. So we do think it would increase the number of U-turns occurring at this location, but thank you for your input. And we will continue to consider that as we move forward. As traffic takes the right out of Publix, is there a U-turn option at Abernathy and Roswell heading southbound? Sorry, it gets, if we hit done, then it goes away. Let me find it. Okay, if U-turn option goes, I'm not sure where, I'm sorry, I don't know where that question went. If one of my partners can send me that question that I started reading again, I will address it in a moment. So on number 6, do you anticipate an increased crashes at Alderwood U-turn? Nevertheless, this is a good idea. So at this point, we do not anticipate additional crashes as a result of making the U-turn movement. We do think that because that has a protected lane at that location, that would be a better option. The U-turn option goes east on Abernathy, is further down the road, further than you indicated on your example. So, I mean, there is definitely an option here at Alderwood to make a U-turn, but I believe there are other opportunities as well further down. Will the Cherry Tree Lane, Alderwood Place, Roswell, or will the Cherry Tree Lane, Alderwood, Abernathy intersection be signalized? We are not proposing to signalize it at this time as part of this. Will the length of the turning of the signal on Roswell be extended now that more traffic will have to utilize them? Will the length of, okay, so will the timing at the intersection be adjusted as a result of the changes in the traffic volumes through the intersection? And so this signal is adaptive and so has the capability to adjust. So, and the city is often adjusting timings out there. So I could anticipate that, you know, as the behaviors change, that the timings will also be adjusted to reflect what's appropriate given the new volumes. So the signage along Abernathy is confusing. Many turn into one-way turn lane, and now you're adding a U-turn at Alderwood. This gets more confusing. Yes, so you're referring to that. Look, it is quite confusing along here. I agree with that. We have looked at it. The crash history does not show specific crashes occurring at this location. Specifically, the movement you're talking about, there's a kind of like a channelized left that goes into the public shopping center, and we are aware of that. There is signage out there as part of this. We're considering, we have looked at maybe doubling the signage if that may be helpful. But yeah, I mean, a U-turn movement is confusing in the near term, and often what we've seen in the past is that people become used to it. It's different at first, and it may not be ideal or what you normally would think of, but this is a solution in traffic safety that is often being recommended at this point to control access and just better accommodate overall vehicles through intersections. Is it possible to U-turn from northbound Roswell Road to southbound Roswell Road? So right now, northbound Roswell to southbound Roswell is not permitted. We're going to look into that further, I believe, because the spacing. So in order to make a U-turn, you need enough space in order to navigate that. And so right now, we don't think that, we think because of the spacing, the U-turn is prohibited at this location. But it is something that we're going to look a little bit further into to see if that could be a possibility here. Obviously, it would make some of the rerouting more straightforward, I guess. So we're going to look into that further. So thank you for asking that question. Why not put a light at Alderwood and Cherry Tree Lane? So I mean, we didn't look at signalizing that intersection as part of the study right now, but it's something that we could discuss further with the city. I don't know that we can look into the volumes and just see if that was a place where a signal may make sense. It is closely spaced, so that would be one concern with signalizing it. People are trying to leave their homes on Cherry Tree Lane and Alderwood, already dealing with so much U-turn traffic. This will just increase volume and make it much more difficult to leave our neighborhoods. Can we at least get a don't block the box posted at that intersection? So thank you for that. It looks like we should take a look at that with Cherry Tree and Alderwood and see what we can do there. And we'll work with the city to talk about how we want to handle that. So we appreciate that information from all of you. U-turn on Abernathy, even when you know how heavy traffic is on Abernathy. I don't know if I don't think that question was. Yes, we are aware of the volumes, and we, again, that U-turn, making a U-turn there is a safer option than the other options. So that's why that's the recommendation. As more traffic controls makes it harder to get in and out of Abernathy Square, this will affect public sales. If they close, that will be a big loss to Sandy Springs. Is there any other study that's been done that could help with traffic in and out so a closure does not happen. There would seem to be other options than to just penalize the center. So we are, we have talked to the public about this. I think that ultimately, I think that this is a question about safety. And so, the public's, we also don't want someone to be in a crash at this location and risk anything. So, making a safer option for them is the priority. I think that no one in the city does not intend to impact sales at the Publix, and it is very sensitive to that. And so, we are definitely considering that, and we understand that it will have impacts. I'm going to take, have you ever considering having a huge roundabout? So the volumes at this location are really too large to have a roundabout. And if we were to put one in that would accommodate the volume here, it would have significant property impacts beyond what would be appropriate. But there is another, at this part of this project specifically, we're looking at low cost, short-term improvements. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the last project, which is, let me get my mouse back, increase the pedestrian walk time. So if you've ever been a pedestrian walking through this intersection, the crosswalks are very short. You can see this woman walking across the street has 7 seconds to get across, and she's not all the way there yet, and you'd expect that she would be someone that could make that in the amount of time that's available. So that was something we noted when we were out there in the field and observed when watching people at the intersection. And so that will be a project that can be implemented just to adjust the timings to allow more time for those that need to cross. I know when I was out there that even I was struggling to cross or not making it in the amount of time that was allowed. And so others that may need more time to cross certainly aren't getting it at this location. And so given the volume out there, and then not, that there are not medians and refuges currently, this will help to allow people to have more time to cross at this location. So those are the recommendations based upon the analysis that's been done at this intersection to really study both behavior out there and the crash history, and really take a data-driven approach to understand what can be done to improve safety in the short term out there at this intersection and the surrounding areas. So we're happy to take more questions at this time, specifically about question 7, or again, we can open it up, but I would like to do that quickly for question 7, and then we'll go through and I'll show you how you can provide your specific input for the project. And I'm guessing, 7 is less complex and maybe less controversial. So not sure that we'll have any questions come through on that one, but hopefully that is a supported improvement. So I haven't seen any questions come in. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to provide your input. That's why we are here tonight. We would like to hear your thoughts, and we appreciate all the feedback thus far. A lot of people have provided input on Cherry Tree, and so we appreciate hearing that from you. What we would like is for you and others to come in and go ahead and give us your specific input on each of the improvements. And so there will be a link to this site, as I said, that you'll be able to travel to from the, that will be sent out, that you'll be able to get to from the Sandy Springs website. And so from there, there'll be a recording. If you want to rewatch this video, you're happy to do so. And then you can also navigate back to here. So at the very bottom, so once you get to this page, you can choose to scroll through the information that's been provided, or you can go just click the bottom arrow and go to the last bullet, which is where the survey is. And so we're looking at getting your input on each of the improvements. The first question is just, do you live in Sandy Springs? And then where your homeowners association, to get a little bit. They just understand if you work here as well. Or maybe you don't live here, but you work here and you travel through the intersection. So trying to understand that, but you can go through, you'll see each of the projects listed on the right side. If you click on it, it will expand. So I'm clicking on the second project, it expands. If I click again, it goes back up. And then you can say if you like the project, yes or no, and then provide your input about that project. specifically. So with that, I will take general questions again. And yeah, if you have any questions, please submit those in the questions answer pod. I believe Dan just sent out a link to where the link will be for you to travel to get to this website. And if you put those questions in, we can talk about those that have been submitted. So looking at project 7, were there any specific amounts of time that were considered, or was it considered more of a general improvement where the deeper dive into times would be considered later? So we did run, I mean, there are specific guidance provided through the professional organizations on what the clearance what intervals should be provided, how much time should be provided for people to cross, and the times that are currently out there are lower. I believe they are lower. So what we would be looking at is raising them to meet those typical times that are provided. They're calculated based upon the number of lanes that the person is walking across, and then a specific walk time. And then, do we have any data on bike car collisions at this intersection? So we do have that data, and I don't have it in front of me right now to pull up, but that is something that we looked at as part of our study. I can actually pull it up to see. I guess if you have a more specific question that you wanted to hear about, definitely type that in and let me know what specifically about that data that you'd be interested in. And I'm pulling that up to answer. Okay, so I have the bike. So there were, over our study period, the 5-year period that we were looking at, there were 3 pedestrian crashes and 2 crashes with bicyclists. And I should have more information on them. So the crash with the bicyclists was a right turn vehicle not yielding to the cyclist and hitting them. And that was a visible injury crash. And then I have information as well. We did review that data. I have information about each of them. There were 3 injury crashes out of the pedestrian crashes and 2 property damage only crashes. I'm just reading through them. Okay, so yeah, we did look at that and consider those in making our recommendations for the intersection. But again, there were a total of 5 that had occurred. And that's if anyone has other questions that they'd like. I mean, I'm going to show again how to navigate the website. So Dan provided a link in the chat, so you can go to the spr.gs/intersection website, and from there you'll be able to navigate to this website, which is here. Oops. And again, you can go in here, and if you go to the very, very bottom, you can go directly to, I don't know why it thinks I changed the page. Oh, maybe because of the survey. But you can go directly to the survey using that link. Again, put in your information and then expand or not expand. And you can provide your input for each specific project. That will help us track it better and more easily respond and adjust as needed based upon your input. Feel free to leave.
We'll be accepting input until Monday, March 29th. So please feel free to forward this to your neighbors. And the more input we get on this, the better. And I think that's about it. Once again, the link is spr.gs/intersection. And if you have any problems accessing the website, there is a email address on the website for you to reach out to us if you're having any problems accessing this site that we'll have up for the next week. So I don't think we have any more questions, do we? Yeah, I did, Lauren, I did reach out to Alderwood last week, but please feel free if they want to reach out to us. Like I said, we'll be accepting input on this for the next week, and we'll be more than happy to discuss with you if you have questions after the meeting this evening. So I think that's about it. Thank you everyone for attending this evening. And once again, the site will be up for the following week. And if we don't have any more questions, thank you for attending, and you'll have a great evening.